Do we have power? Beam me up, Scotty. I hate to interrupt all the congeniality, to tell you the truth, but we need to get going here. So I do truly enjoy seeing all of you talk and smile and not just sit there like Tom was going through your iPhone. So it's nice that you guys have a chance to talk, but that's over for the day. Good morning. Tuesday, March 5th. I'd like to call this meeting to order. I will begin by introducing my board members. To my left, Vice Chair Francis Spivey Weber. To Fran's left, Board Member Felicia Marcus. To my right, Board Member Tam Doduk. And to her right, Board Member Stephen Moore, fresh from vacation in Hawaii. I'm not saying that sarcastically. That sounded like a pretty good gig to me. Mr. Howard, would you please introduce your staff for us?
Thank you. To my right, Chief Counsel Michael Laufer, and to his right, Chief Deputy Director John Bishop. Karen Turgovich is not with us today. She's providing nursing services for her husband. And assisting the board today is Janine Townsend and Courtney Davis.
Very good, thank you. As all of you know, I'm nearing my last board meeting, and it's going to be my policy when I go back to the farm to gather all my employees up every morning and tell them how to go through an emergency evacuation in the event that they need to do so. I think it's something that I've learned here, and I know it's productive, and I don't know on 31 different sites where to tell them to go, but I'm going to make sure they understand they need to do that. But with that, you're going to have to endure another one of these from me. If you do hear an alarm, there's 2 exit signs at the back of the room. If you would proceed down the stairs in an orderly fashion and across the street, and please avoid the construction equipment that's over there tearing up the concrete, but you'll find a place until the all clear button has been sounded. And once again, you're reminded to obey all traffic laws when you cross the street, or the ladies in the 3-wheel bikes and the foam hats are going to nail you. I would also like to let you know that this meeting is being webcast and recorded. So when you come to the microphone or come to the podium, please introduce yourself, your name, and if you're representing someone other than yourself, please let us know who that is. And most importantly, if you would turn off the electronic devices or put them on mute, I would appreciate that very much. With that done, at every board meeting we have an opportunity for a public forum for a member of the public to address the board on an issue that's not pending before us. Do you have any cards, Ms. Townsend? Do we have anyone that would like to speak in the public forum that didn't turn in a card? Seeing none. We'll consider the we're going to adopt them. I mean, the February 19th, 2013 board meeting. Is there any questions or corrections on that?
Excuse me, Chair Hoppen. I actually, thanks to Mr. Bishop, there is a small correction on the minutes. There are 2 areas labeled board members present. The second should be board members absent, and it should actually be board member absent.
That would be colleague Moore, then, I assume, who was not here, who left us alone. I see. Okay. With that correction, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the February 19th board meeting.
So moved.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Do any of my colleagues have anything?
I abstain from that vote.
Oh,
yeah.
and one abstained.
Yeah, thank you.
Do any of my colleagues have anything they would like to report?
I actually do. Just real quickly, I wanted to let folks know I was invited to speak at the 40th Annual Pollution Prevention and Stormwater Conference for the California Water Environment Association. And I spoke to the matters of sustainability and water resources and how we need to implement integrated water resource management programs and projects. And I highlighted something in the Executive Director's Report this month, celebrating the East Contra Costa program's completion of 9 separate major projects under the IRWEMP program. So there's a nice audience of 150 folks there, and it was an opportunity to highlight the importance of that to the State Water Board. But I also wanted to highlight one of the other folks on the panel was Director Debbie Raffel of the Department of Toxic Substance Control and she gave a wonderful and inspiring call to action talk about the regulations there. They've gone through their 10th iteration, and they're getting close to finalizing the Safer Consumer Products Regulation. It's a real innovation in pollutant source control. It really looks at how the products we have, not just if they're safe, but if they're really necessary, or if there's components, chemical components in our products that are necessary, or if there's a safer, less harmful alternative to human health and the environment. So it's a very important program that DTSC is implementing, and I just wanted to give a voice of support to Debbie Rafael and her efforts. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Tam?
I had the opportunity to attend a groundbreaking ceremony, excuse me, for a septic to sewer project that was funded, partially, mostly, by our SRF program, and I see some wonderful staff here in the room that works on that. It was over a $10 million loan, half of which were in loan forgiveness, and it would convert 1,500 septic parcels, I guess, into sewers. So it certainly was a great effort on the staff's part to work with the smaller disadvantaged community in order to put that in place. And it really, I so rarely attend these groundbreaking ceremonies, but this one really emphasized to me how important the SRF program is and what a tremendous impact it really does have on communities, on people in the communities. But the one thing that I wanted to, actually two things. One was just again to congratulate DFA staff for the tremendous work that they did, not only on this particular community and this particular project, but all the SRF projects that they work on. And the other thing, just a heads up for you all, was not prominent in all the speeches that were made, but there was a general buzz in the room at the groundbreaking ceremony about how excited many of the local officials were about the paving that will be done as part of this project.
I thought you were going to say about me leaving.
No. And as it turns out, part of our SRF loan covers a certain amount of pavement work that is done for the installation of these sewer laterals and pipes and connections. So I'm looking at Jim Mons in the audience and DFA staff. I think Liz was here, but she just left. I'm strongly encouraging staff as part of their proposed update to us for the SRF policy and guidelines to look into ensuring that we provide the proper incentives and motivation that when paving is funded as part of our SRS program to include LIDs and other sustainable features.
Well, it's one of the missions of any regulatory agency to cover things up. And that's what they were doing there. Don't you know that?
Take a look at our chief counsel's face as you say that.
Anyone else?
That falls into the Charlie exception that he can say anything he wants that none of the rest of us could ever say, and it's not a problem.
I will say, last Friday I was reminded of something. Felicia and I attended the Northern California Water Association annual meeting. She did a very good job of being their keynote speaker. They were very kind to me and said nice things, and I did not get any gifts, Council, that I needed to declare. I had a very nice lunch, and that was it.
I was kind of bummed out they didn't give you some
They
big
gave everybody else a book.
thing. They gave everybody else something,
Yeah,
and not
they
you. I
did.
didn't get
Maybe they don't like me very much. But I say this mainly to my colleagues. I was reminded of the importance of all of us getting out and attending things like that. And I've probably been the worst of all the board members about reaching out to people, attending meetings, and speaking. And I was reminded, as Felicia spoke, how the meetings I have attended with my colleagues, both the ones that are here and ones that have preceded me, is that we have a lot of unique things to say, and so often, and I won't name him, but there was a former Secretary of Food and Ag that I listened to a lot, and he gave the same little canned speech every time he went someplace, and it really alienated me, to tell you the truth. And when I listened to Felicia talk, and it could have been Tam or Stephen or Fran, either one, talking about what we're doing and how it was going to be affecting the people in the room and our willingness to work with people, I thought it showed one of the things that I'll remember about the Water Board, and that is our ability to do our best to outreach to stakeholders. Obviously, it's not always perfect, but I think it conveyed an important attitude. So I feel somewhat remiss in the fact that I wasn't very good at doing that, but I just want to acknowledge that it's a very important part of our jobs. So with that, Mr. Howard, would you introduce item number 3, please?
Yes, item number 3 is the board consideration of adoption of a statewide general NPDES permit for residual aquatic pesticides. And let's see, we have Jenny Chen will be presenting.
Good morning. I'm Diana Messina. I'm the new supervising engineer in the...
Welcome.
Thank you. In the surface water permitting section, DWQ, as of last Friday. So thank you for the welcome.
Will you be wearing ties on Fridays?
Excuse me?
Will you be wearing ties on Fridays?
I don't know. I might want to be a little original.
For those who were not familiar with Bruce Fujimoto, that was his celebration of Fridays, was to wear a tie.
Ah, okay. I'll think about it. This item for your consideration is the aquatic weed control permit. It's a statewide NPDES permit and general order to regulate the application of aquatic pesticides. That's to control algae and weeds. Next to me, we have Phil Iserina. He's the senior engineer in the NPDES unit. And next to him is Renan Haranji. And we were supposed to have Jenny Chen, but we don't. They're the staff engineers that have developed this permit. Phil will explain what's new with this renewal. He'll go through the tentative permit process and detailed permit discussions to answer any of your questions or anyone else's questions. Then Phil Wiles is our attorney for this item today. And we have Geeta Kapai here from the Office of Public Participation. And Geeta's here because we did receive a late comment from the Hoopa Valley tribe with their concerns about this proposed order, and we can go further into that through our discussion here.
Thank you, Diana. Chair Hoppin and members of the board. Staff is proposing the aquatic weed control permit before you in response to a series of court cases that culminated in the National Cotton Council of America versus US EPA decision by the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals. The court decision requires that pesticide applications at, near, or over water that could result in a discharge of pollutants to waters of the United States be covered by an NPDES permit. The proposed aquatic weed control permit will supersede existing order 2004-009-DWQ when it becomes effective on December 1st, 2013. Here are the steps we've taken to get to this point. On July 6, 2012, we published a public hearing notice in newspapers throughout the state and on the State Water Board's website. We also sent the notice to stakeholders via the weed control permit LIRIS list. The public notice provided a link to the first draft permit. A month later, you held a public hearing to receive oral comments on the first draft permit. Written comments were due a couple weeks later after the public hearing. We tried to take the item to your December 4th, 2012 meeting, but the agenda then was so full that we ended up pulling the item. Instead, we posted a second draft permit on the State Water Board's website on December 6, 2012. The second draft permit included our changes to the first draft in response to the written comments received then. Written comments on the second draft permit were due on December 24th, 2012. We made several changes in response to the second set of written comments. Thus, we posted a third draft of the permit on January 24th, 2013 on the State Water Board's website with written comments due on February 19, 2013. That takes us to where we are now. In addition to the track changes in the proposed permit before you, we are also proposing changes contained in the change sheet that we circulated via the LIRIS list, or the Weed Control Permit LIRIS list, yesterday afternoon. Copies of the change sheet and the latest response to comments are on the back table and have been passed out to the board members either yesterday or this morning. The public notices, draft versions of the permit, and responses to comments are posted on the State Water Board's website, which also provides a document that shows the changes between the proposed permit and the existing permit. The major changes to the proposed permit include addition of the following: 2 new active ingredients, namely imazamox and pinoxylum, monitoring triggers for imazapyr and triclopyr triethylamine, receiving water limitations for dissolved oxygen, a 30-day public comment period for each aquatic pesticide application plan, and as a late change, a commitment that staff will use the weed control permit LIRIS list to notify interested persons when an aquatic pesticide application plan has been posted on the State Water Board's website. Another change is application processing and approval by the State Water Board staff in close coordination with Regional Water Board staff. Previously, review and approval of an application was conducted by Regional Water Board staff solely. Another change is a requirement that the discharger can only discharge on the date of approval of the application by the Deputy Director of the Division of Water Quality. And finally, a requirement that reduces annual reporting to providing summaries instead of detailed information. The proposed permit includes receiving water limitations and receiving water monitoring triggers and other requirements designed to protect the most sensitive beneficial use of the receiving water. By doing so, all other beneficial uses are automatically protected. On the third draft permit, we received timely written comments from the Association of California Water Agencies. The comments consisted mostly of minor editorial changes that we agreed to and added to the permit accordingly. In other cases, we did not see the need to change the permit as there was no clear rationale as to why the change is being proposed, or making the requested change would result in a conflict with established definitions in a permit. In another case, Aqua requested to delete some information regarding the annual reporting that Aqua believed to be redundant. However, we clarified in the response to comments that it was a requirement to make sure the information is collected. However, it does not require the information to be submitted twice. We also received one late comment letter from the Hoopa Valley Tribe. The Hoopa Valley Tribe is opposed to the aquatic weed permit being used in the following situations: any salmon-bearing or heavily used river or stream where there is scientific controversy or unknown impacts related to the proposed action, and where there will be negative water quality impacts. The tribe is also opposed to the permit where it allows the use of any chemicals that have been shown to have negative health impacts on humans, wildlife, or fisheries. The Hoopa Valley Tribe does support the new public comment period proposed in the permit. Staff is not proposing any substantive changes to the permit as a result, but is proposing to add an obligation that staff will send a notice to the weed control permit LIRIS list every time an aquatic pesticide application is posted on the State Water Board's website for a 30-day public comment period. However,
Can somebody tell me why that's necessary? That just seems to me like a big waste of time and resources, to tell you the truth. I mean, would somebody do that for me? I don't care who. It just, you know, every time there's an NOI to be sending out to the LIRIS list, and I don't know what we expect to accomplish with that other than a whole bunch of busy work.
Well, my understanding, and I'll let staff step in with additional detail, was that there was some concern that for interested persons, and the tribes, for example, in this case, have voiced some concern about the historical use of the aquatic weed general permit. But they often don't know that there's going to be an application or what's being proposed. We will be posting these on our website as we feel is necessary under the law. However, unless somebody's checking our website each day, they don't know that a new APAP has been posted and that they have an opportunity to comment. And so what Mr. Iserino is proposing to do, and what the staff proposal is to create a targeted LIRIS list. People would subscribe to it only if they're interested in finding out about APAPs. And at least that points people to our website so they know that there is a new APAP up that they have an opportunity to comment on.
But if they comment, are we going to, will that delay the application, or do we say thank you for your comment, we're not going to do anything? I mean, how do we respond to that? I mean, it just seems like we're creating an awful lot of stuff.
It's the nature of the beast. We have to address the comments that are raised, and we will work with the discharger and the regional boards to make sure that we address the comments expeditiously, so that we will be able to issue the approval letter in a 90-day period.
So,
You know, tell me about,
so there is a line that we're trying to straddle here between the using a general permit to expedite the use of the applications and make it legal under the Clean Water Act. So that's one side. The other side is providing folks that have said they're very concerned about the application with the opportunity to voice that concern where it's appropriate. Those are the two pieces that we're trying to straddle. The board, of course, has the option of the notification by the LIRIS list is what we added in our attempt to satisfy the concerns of the tribes. The board, of course, has the option of taking that out. That's not a legal requirement.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
that was
John,
something.
it came up in conversations, and I'm not chiding you for this, but, you know, 90 days, it was portrayed to me that a lot of water districts spray on a regular schedule every year at a certain time and what have you. But in the life I live in, 90 days is a heck of a long time. And if a permit holder sees a need to apply an aquatic herbicide, I'm having a really difficult time visualizing that they're going to know that they need to do this 90 days in advance, and that we're going to have all this LIRIS list stuff all resolved, and there's going to be some continuity to getting this done. And I'm still, maybe it's just me, but it just seems like we've got something in place that is going to inhibit the need for putting these things on. I mean, people don't go out and put them on because their budget says they've got dollars for herbicides, and every July they need to go put them in the water whether they need them or not. I just, the life I live doesn't give me the opportunity to anticipate things like that 90 days in advance.
Yeah, and I'll let staff as well as commenters that we may hear later address the specific timing concerns. I mean, my understanding was historically the way this permit was used was that the districts would essentially prophylactically prepare an application plan, and so they would have it available if they needed to actually apply aquatic pesticides during that particular season. So it's not as if they wait until there's mats of algae or
Right.
some other weed and then submit a pesticide application plan to the State Water Board. And the other thing, I just want to augment one thing that Mr. Bishop said. I mean, historically, we looked at these general permits as a very flexible tool and did not go through any sort of subsequent notice. There were subsequent decisions invalidating various general approaches taken by US EPA with respect to CAFOs, with respect to some of the Phase 2 municipal stormwater permitting requirement that made us recognize that unless we have very prescriptive requirements, something we've tried to avoid in this particular permit, recognizing the need for some flexibility, that you need to have an opportunity for public comment to satisfy the public participation requirements of the Clean Water Act. So we're trying to find a balance. We think we found a flexible balance at this point in time. And as Mr. Isorino indicated, staff believes that they'll be able to work through any of those comments within the timelines that we've established in the general order.
Well, hopefully we'll have someone here from a district to comment on that. Thank you.
Just to follow up on Charlie's questions, is there a, excuse me, a timeframe for when people need to provide comments once the LIRIS notice is sent out? It's not like they can wait until, day 89 and submit a comment. What is the time limit?
The application plans are going to be posted for a 30-day public comment period. So they have 30 days to comment on the plan.
And
Is
if I-
that the minimum legally required period?
Well, as Mr. Loffer was explaining, we are trying to be consistent with the court decisions that do require a 30-day comment period where we're not very prescriptive prescriptive in the permit. 30 days is the default requirement in the
Right.
Clean Water Act for permits. If I can, there's just one other small issue that might bear on this, which is that in conversations with Aqua, staff was concerned that having this 90 days, at least maximum of 90 days before the notice is issued and they can begin to apply, staff was concerned that that might actually affect their ability to apply pesticides this year. And so as a result, what staff is proposing is that the permit have a delayed effective date until December 2013, which would give those districts that regularly apply things an opportunity to actually have their approvals received well in advance of when they would need to apply.
I have a question. Is there anything that keeps a water district from stepping out of the general permit and just getting a permit for regular application on a given set of, say, canals or whatever, so that they don't have to keep coming back each time if they have a sort of a regular schedule and a regular geography, and then they don't need to use the general permit, they can do one public comment period and they've got a permit?
The answer is they can do that. We're trying to streamline things a bit by the use of the general permit, but if there really is a valid use to have an individual permit, the regional board could issue it or the state board could issue it.
All right, I have some other comments on this. This is part of my concern, so we can talk about it here, and but let's let the commenters speak.
I also want to add that it's just a one-time application. They don't have to apply every time they are applying pesticides. It's just a one-time application to get covered for the life of the permit.
Okay, so the general permit, they apply once, and it's for the life of the permit, so.
Correct.
Good.
Continuing on, staff is not, I don't know where I left off. There is one additional change we caught late yesterday that didn't make it to the change sheet. It is on page 37 of the document, or C9 in the monitoring and reporting program. The second paragraph, which reads, monitoring reports shall be submitted to the State Water Board's Deputy Director of the Division of Water Quality and the appropriate Regional Water Board Executive Officer in accordance with the following schedule, : that whole paragraph needs to be deleted. Staff recommends that the board adopt the proposed permit, including the changes in the change sheet and the deletion of the paragraph on page C9 as I just described. We're now available to answer any questions any other questions you may have.
Maybe just to continue the discussion a little bit. So you indicated the timeline for receiving comments on a given plan for a given applicant that files an NOI for the life of the permit. And so do we have a timeline expressed for staff's response to any comments received? And I'd like to know where the regional board staff fit into this. Are they recipients of the LIRIS message automatically? Do you work closely with regional board staff in responding to comments on the plan that's submitted by the applicant?
Yes, the timing for addressing the comments and issuing an approval letter is 90 days, as is specified in the permit. And yes, we absolutely work closely with regional board staff, and as soon as we get an application, we send them a copy of it, the whole package, NOI, fees, copy of the fees, and the application plan, even before we post the package on our website.
Janine, do you have any speaker cards in this? Did you share them with us? Thank you, Courtney. David Bolin.
Thank you, Chair Hoppen and board members. I'm David Bolin with the Association of California Water Agencies. I first want to express my appreciation to the board for your engagement in this process over the many years we've been doing this. Many of you weren't present way back when we first had to engage in putting this permit together. And the whole idea of the nationwide permit was to try to streamline the process, make sure we did kind of walk that balance that was being talked about full disclosure and processing. And yet, many of these products are registered under federal FRFRA law. They're applied regularly for this purpose. And our member agencies, both urban and ag, use them for water management purposes statewide. And this is an important permit for our members, as it is for other water management organizations as well. Appreciate the staff's effort to try to refine this permit. This is the second essential 5-year permit. We're under a current effort to comply, and now we're trying to refine the tool even further. There have been ways in which we've been able to streamline some of the processes, but I do appreciate the way the board members have identified some of the concerns that we do have about this disclosure and kind of the clock involved here and just the administration of the permit. And I guess there are still some concerns that we've expressed to staff. The staff has tried to accommodate in various ways. We've put in words like, the staff will use its discretion to try to work with the regional boards to try to move things quickly. But we are concerned. Particularly, we were concerned about this glut of new permits that would need to occur early in a season to position the hundreds of agencies so that they could begin the treatment process in the spring when the water warms up. And that, of course, varies around the state. And there are hundreds of agencies that do need to use this permit. And so the centralization of the administration by the staff was of some concern to us. We have successfully worked with the regional boards in a more disaggregated way. But there was a sense that we needed to centralize this process. So we believe that the concession that to move the start date to December was a real sound one, so that we're able to do the work we need to do with our association and our membership to get them in a position to apply for this new permit and to get it in place earlier in the fall so that they're ready to work in the spring. However, 90 days is a long time, and there are going to be entities that are coming into this late. That always happens. People suddenly in January or February realize they need to have a weed permit and have a very short window. We've gotten, I guess you call it, affirmations by staff that they'll try as hard as they can to process all these permits in a timely way, and that folks will be able to treat these waters when they need to. As far as the public disclosure, on the website or whatever else, we're open to the idea of transparency and public, I guess, awareness of these treatments. But again, if it means other bites at the apple in terms of the efficacy or the safety or the procedures that our agencies are trying to adopt on any given treatment, and some concerns that the public might have about that, I guess it will remain to be seen how staff administers the permit. And so we're a little bit uneasy, I guess, about this kind of continuing micromanagement the weed treatment process. We think.
David, let me ask you another question. I think Phil and John explained the 90-day thing as they see it. My concern is, and maybe this isn't it's not a concern of your members, but with this 90-day NOI, a discharger is going to put everything that's in their potential arsenal or on their permit in this 90-day notice, full well knowing that they're probably not going to use all of them. They may not use any of them, but if I need to give a 90-day notice, I'm going to put everything on my permit in that NOI, and so this comment period is going to deal with a lot of fluff, as I see it, people commenting about what might be used when in reality it has nothing to do with the intent but trying to cover their bases in this 90-day time period. And in the other world that I live in, we give a 24-hour NOI. If the Ag Commissioner feels they need more time, it takes a little bit more time, and then there's a follow-up NOA. I fully appreciate the situation we're in with a need for public disclosure, but it just seems like we're going to generate so much stuff here that is, and I don't know if you feel that way. I'm not trying to put words in your mouth because I'm not in the position of some of your members, but it seems like we're going to do an overkill on this to satisfy these requirements.
Yeah, I guess certainly when you have the idea that an individual permit might be more streamlined and more effective than a general permit, you're somehow your process isn't working out real well. The idea of a general permit was to try to streamline and make it more efficient and to not have to do individual permits around the state for weed treatment. And I hope we don't have to go that direction. I think that would be backwards. And then the other thing was, of course, aligning this treatment of weeds in water with we have a whole different infrastructure in California in terms of agricultural pesticide treatment and on land. And so part of these are artifacts of the Clean Water Act, and again, tracing this all back to legal action that occurred in the Talent decision, and this idea that somehow the federal pesticide laws were not adequate to meet Clean Water Act standards. Obviously the politics of that, there's been some attempt to try to fix that at the federal level, and that hasn't happened. So this has been a workaround for many years, and we've gotten it to the point, I think we've dialed this thing in. It is working. In general, we're cautiously optimistic about this next round of permitting, and I guess we're willing to see how it works. And we appreciate the staff's effort to try to accommodate all these different concerns. And I guess on the technical questions in terms of just how a given permittee might respond if, for instance, staff comes back, at day 29 or day 31 or day 36 or whatever after the public comments and is suggesting that the weed treatment regime needs to change because of some concerns by the citizens or the public or whatever. That's obviously negotiable on an individual sort of basis. And I guess we'll be monitoring that as an association. If there's a lot of heat energy developed, we may come back to the board for some solutions. I would like to just go ahead and underscore the fact that we've got Mike Blankenship here, who's going to be speaking next as a technical guy. He's worked with our many of our members and worked closely with our work group to try to look at the technical aspects of the permit, and his team has worked with the staff closely to try to make sure that the permit is technically sound, and he's got some remarks as well. So I'll just defer to Mike, but I will say as an association we appreciate the effort that the board has given to this fairly boutique issue, but it is important to water management in California. And it's not just ag, it's the urbans as well. So thank you.
Thank you, David.
Chair Hoppin?
Yes.
Could I respond to your comment?
Certainly.
I'd like to give a historical perspective on how we've dealt with posting the plans on our website. Although the current weed control permit doesn't require posting of plans, after issuance of the CAFO rule that Mr. Laufer alluded to, we started posting all the plans that we've received as part of the application. And as far as I know, we didn't receive any comments on those plans. We have the same experience with the vector control permit, which required, that explicitly required posting of application plans, and we received just a handful of comments initially, but I would say 1 or 2 comments from an environmental group, and after we addressed their comments, we've received no further comments. So what I'm trying to say is, it may seem like it's going to be a long, drawn-out process, but our experience indicates otherwise.
Phil, I appreciate your explanation, and I know often you receive the brunt of my ire on some of these things, and I realize you're just dealing with some of the directives that you have no control over. So I appreciate you taking the time to explain that. I think you see my concern. I mean, the potential is there for a web of string, I suppose. What you're saying in reality with your vector permit and others, that it doesn't come to fruition. So I truly appreciate your explanation. Thank you. Mr. Blankenship.
Good morning, board members, Chairman Hoppen, Mike Blankenship with Blankenship and Associates, working both with Aqua, but also representing about 50 irrigation districts and water conveyance districts throughout the state. We've had an opportunity to work with board staff and work with this permit for the last 9 years, and so we've got a pretty good sense for the brass tacks of how it gets implemented and how it ultimately gets used by water districts. And so we view the permit as it's currently written as an entirely workable one. The notification process I think is also not perfect, but certainly is going to be workable. And just to make sure it's clear, as I think was trying to be explained briefly, this aquatic pesticide application plan is prepared, submitted, and then there's a comment period that exists for its review. That is not to be confused with the actual getting out into the field and making an application that is not required to have a 90-day approval process. So if there is an irrigation district that has the very acute appearance of a weed that needs to be dealt with immediately, it doesn't require 90 days for an approval process to run its course in order for that problem to be resolved. So I want to make sure that there's nodding heads, that we all agree that that's in fact the way the process is run, and that we're not hamstrung by a 90-day process. So I want to make sure that that's clear. Other than to not take additional time to say the same things Dave Boland said, I'll just state that I agree with everything he said. It's well spoken. And I'll close with the statement that harks back to some of the earlier comments that you made to open the meeting about the board members attending meetings and wanting to do outreach and be engaged in the permitted community. Well, I think there's a trickle-down effect there. I'd point out the concept that you've elucidated to and alluded to here as something that I think the staff takes and runs with. And I know that mostly because the board staff has been very open about receiving comments. They've been open about coming out into the field with us to see how these permits work, and have been receptive to the comments and questions that the water district community, the irrigation community, the overall aqua community has offered. So appreciate you setting the tone. It's working as it trickles down to the board staff, and we certainly as a permitted community appreciate that.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
Any additional questions? No, that's it.
Then let me.
Why they're playing Kumbaya on the public address system there.
You know, we could play some Clapton or something sometime just to amuse the people who are listening. I just want to say I appreciated the change that the staff made. I must admit, even before seeing the HOOPA letter, I did have concern about tribal outreach in particular, because I know this is an issue of great concern to tribes. And I think...
particularly those that are in the middle of the Emerald Triangle.
Well, it could be. I mean, any number of them. And I think although we are not the federal government, and I obviously have more experience in the federal government where we did have a formal trust responsibility, I do think one of the nice things about California, as opposed to many of the other states that I worked with when I was at EPA is that there's been a real effort to recognize the special relationship with tribes and do special outreach. That said, I do think it's important, not just because the court cases tell us to, and that's always a good thing to pay attention to, of course. I do think it's good public policy to give this notice, period. And I don't think it'll end up being taken up in a lot of places. I don't think it ends up needing to hamstring anybody, but I think there's a value to creating that space where folks can engage with the technical staff in particular. And I think 9 times out of 10 or 99 out of 100, that process will simply validate what many people feel to be true and help give some confidence to the public that are concerned about what are poisons in some way getting into a waterway, and explain what happens with them. They dissipate, different chemical processes happen, and I just think it is important to look at what's the most sensitive beneficial use and give the public some assurance that it's going to be okay in those cases where people are concerned. I also like the idea of the LIRIS list where people opt into it. It's not that it's this broad thing, so that if people are interested in a given area where they're tribal or public or neighboring landowners and farmers and others and ranchers, et cetera, that we have an ability, a relief valve to be able to have that conversation, and obviously have the regional board make whatever particular accommodations they need to make in a particular case. So I actually think that the staff has done a nice job responding to everyone's concerns in this, including mine, which I appreciate now that I understand it. And so I'm pretty comfortable with it. I do know that there is a particular outreach plan to tribes, which I think is good. So I was hoping that Gita would talk about it just for a few moments, just so anyone listening in over the web or in the audience knows that we are going to make a special effort to engage with tribes on this.
Sure, I'm happy to. So the outreach would include communication to tribes with a letter, and that would include information on how to sign up for the LIRIS list, other communication education tools, perhaps a trifold brochure explaining the APAP and requirements, and opportunities to comment, and then distributing informational materials and at speaking events such as the upcoming Tribal Summit in April, various tribal meetings such as the RTOC quarterly and the Cali-PA Tribal Advisory Committee, just to name a few. And I can work with you closely on other
Great.
avenues
I'll
that we could
volunteer
do.
to work with you on that. That'd be
Okay.
great.
Thank you.
Okay.
Since you all know by now that I love efficiency, let me follow up on comments that Phil made in response to the chair's questions. You know, you said that from historical experience, these LIRIS notices and these postings really don't generate a great deal of comments. Is there a way to build a evaluation loop into this process so that for future permits, having learned and having had the experience, we could look at streamlining some of the time periods involved, meaning, you know, say 5 years from now or whenever, when we looked at this permit again, and you know from experience that the 90-day period really is not necessary for some agencies doing routine things year after year. There should be a way for us to examine that data and build that into the next permit so that we can streamline some of the review period and the notice period so that we don't if we don't have to cling to the 90-day, 30-day, you know, whatever that's built into this permit after years of experience, there should be a way for us to learn from that and streamline that in the future. Have staff given some thought to that?
Well, we hadn't until now. I did want to mention that we are starting anew with the LIRIS notice. In the past, what we've done is just post without notifying people that it was posted. We are taking a slightly different step here, but I do think that it's a great idea for us to track the efficacy of this approach and see if it's workable or if we're getting anything. If we're not, maybe it's not worth continuing that effort in a revision of the permit.
So I would agree that 90 days is a very long time. And if we can show through our own experience, our own data, that could be streamlined and make more efficient, then we really need to track that and be able to incorporate that in future permits.
Well, and let me just add one thing to that idea. I mean, the whole concept of requiring notice on these particular general permits is something that is evolving, and the idea that we saw carry out in the construction general permit, for example, is that we felt comfortable enough that there are specific requirements in that we didn't require additional public notices. So certainly as we go forward, you know, in my ideal world, the general permit would be a general permit that's issued once by this water board, and it's essentially ministerial for districts to enroll under it if the criteria are specific enough. And we could use this permit potentially to develop the information to make those kind of findings. And as well, the law in this area is evolving. It doesn't apply here in California, but there has been a district court case elsewhere in the country that has concluded that the types of documents submitted and prepared here don't require public notice. So we happen to be in a circuit that has said they do. So I would hope that the next go-around of the permit we can continue to streamline and refine, because the legal parameters that constrain the board will have changed.
And how do we document that, knowing that 5 years is a long time and boards change in 5 years?
So we have in every general permit been moving towards the idea of putting enough specificity in it so that the stormwater management plan or the application plan is not necessary for public notice. We didn't quite get there with this permit, but we did get there with the small MS4. We did get there with the construction stormwater permit. We did get there with the Caltrans permit. So we are very conscious of this issue, and we're, as an organization, trying very hard to do that. The problem with it, the reason that it's not so easy, is that it requires that we put enough specificity in it, which means we tie the hands of the folks that are doing the operation. And in some cases, we haven't felt that we could do that efficiently. And so we've fallen back to this approach.
And again, how do we document this commitment to track and follow up and streamline? I trust you and your word, John, but, you know, 5 years is a long time.
So we keep track of board's requests, and so we will put this on as an item. I don't know how we would, I'll leave it to Michael if there's some other better way to do it in the documentation.
Or the
It looks like he is.
Great.
What we could do, and I was trying to think about how. What we could do, and what I was trying to do, is figure out how to succinctly do it, is to simply add a finding in the fact sheet that it is the intent of the board to evaluate the need for a 90-day notice or a 90-day review period for subsequent permit reissuances period, and that staff should, in reissuing the permit, consider efforts or consider efficiencies that would either eliminate the need to file a notice of intent or to provide public notice of a notice of intent, or shorten the review period.
Can I suggest that it could go either way? I wouldn't frame it just as shortening. We may find that there's public comments and there's a problem and that we need to do more.
Okay,
We're not thinking there will be, but we don't know. I'm assuming you're correct, but I really think we should instead just have something that says we'll track how long does it take to get them done? Do we really need 90 days? What's the volume of comments we get? Is our notice adequate, so that you're evaluating it in a 360 more holistic way? And then in 5 years, we'll have some data as well as some anecdotal experience to rely on.